everyone. In this chapter, that is Introduction to Corporate Finance, we are going to now study about fixed capital. First of all, let us understand what is capital requirements. Whenever a person conceives an idea of starting a business, he starts thinking of the amount of finance that will be required. Therefore, we can say over here that finance and the concept of starting a business are interrelated. A capital requirement is the amount of capital that is required in liquid form, that is cash, or in fixed assets. It is the sum total of the funds that a company needs to achieve its goals. So therefore, a requirement of the capital that is going to be there, it can be in any form. But a business organization requires both these forms of capital. A financial plan is then outlined that mentions about the volume of capital requirements. A plan is very much important because only when there is going to be planning, then an organization can look into the needs of the organization and hence achieve the profits of the organization. Therefore, this financial plan is a comprehensive evaluation of the financial requirements and arranging the sources of capital. A financial plan is drafted keeping in mind the present and future requirements of finance. It helps predict future income, asset values, and withdrawal plans. Therefore, it is very much important that a financial plan has to be outlined immediately when the business is going to be incorporated. Two important aspects are taken into consideration for capital requirements, that is fixed capital and working capital. In this topic, here we are going to study about fixed capital. Let us now understand the types of capital requirements. Here we are going to study what is fixed capital. As we can observe over here that there are various types of fixed capital. So what exactly is this fixed capital? Let us understand that. Fixed capital is the capital that is used for purchasing fixed assets like machinery, land and building, furniture, etc. This capital remains in the business almost permanently. So when we say permanently, it means more than one accounting year. This capital contains tangible and intangible assets. Now, what we mean by assets and what we mean by tangible and intangible assets? Assets are everything a company owns. Tangible assets are physical. They include cash, inventory, vehicles, equipments, buildings, and investments. Intangible assets do not exist in the physical form and includes things like accounts receivables, prepaid expenses, patents, goodwill, copyrights, etc. Therefore, these two capitals, that is tangible assets and intangible assets, are required for any organization. This capital is also required whenever the company has to purchase such assets during the lifetime of the company. Because this capital is going to be required as and when there is going to be any sort of purchases or whenever there are going to be any sort of updations in the organization. Fixed capital is the portion of total capital outlay of a business invested in physical assets such as factories, vehicles, land and building that stays in the business for almost more than one accounting year.
Fixed assets are tangible property that a business uses in the process of producing income. To qualify as a fixed asset, the item cannot be consumed or sold in less than a year. Fixed assets are listed on a company's balance sheet and are subject to depreciation. Buildings, factories, leasehold improvements, computers, electronic hardware, furniture, automobiles, and construction equipment are all examples of fixed assets. Another distinction of a fixed asset is that it is not for resale. Assets purchased for resale are listed in a company's balance as inventory. This may seem obvious in most situations, but consider Big Box Electronics. Big Box sells computers to consumers, but it also uses computers to help run its business. The computers purchased for resale are considered inventory, whereas the computers used by the sales force are considered fixed assets. While on the balance sheet, fixed assets affect the income statement through depreciation. Depreciation is a way to expense a fixed asset over its useful life. It is an estimate of wear and tear or obsolescence on the asset. For instance, the computers Big Box uses for its business systems will probably need to be replaced in about 3 years. So a $3,000 computer will be expensed, depreciated $1,000 for 3 years.
Now, let us study why is fixed capital important for any company. It is required to buy fixed assets in the company. Fixed assets like land and building, plant and machinery are all the assets that are going to be required for every type of organization. Therefore, this fixed capital is required to buy these fixed assets. It requires to meet various promotional expenses of a company. Promotional expense means it is a cost that companies incur to make their products or services to consumers. Companies engage in promotion expenses in order to boost sales and revenues of these organizations. It also aids companies to modernize by increasing the purchase of modern machines and implementation of latest technologies. It is necessary to replace out-of-date and scrapped assets. If an organization does not modernize itself or it does not replace the assets, then it will be lacking in technology and therefore it has to keep itself with the times. It helps in expansion and diversification. Every organization dreams of diversification. Every organization wants to expand itself. And so, whenever there is going to be expansion and diversification, there is going to be a need of more capital to be invested in the fixed assets. It helps in automation of a company. Whenever there is new technology or whenever there is going to be a requirement according to the customers, there has to be automation also. It is essential if a company decides to widen its scope of activities. So if a company is going to invest in more types of products of the organization, at that time it will require more fixed capital. Therefore, every company requires fixed capital. It is based on various aspects. And so we are going to study also what are the various aspects. When is fixed capital required? At the time of establishment of a new company, that is, whenever the company is going to be established, at that time it requires this fixed capital to purchase the fixed assets. And these assets are going to help the company to achieve profits. Or existing companies need capital for expansion or development, replacement of equipments, etc. Then how is it planned? How is it that the fixed capital, how is it going to be deciding as to how much it is going to be requiring it? There is an initial planning by the promoters of the organization. They plan out as to what is going to be the requirement of the assets. And then they prepare a list of all the fixed assets. Then there is the estimation of the cost of these assets as to how much will be the cost or how much is going to be the investment in these fixed assets. Other information regarding the price of land, cost of construction, etc. is gathered. And when this information is ready, at that time the funding of these assets has to be done. And so it is done by shares, debentures, bonds, etc. as per the requirements of the organization. And so these companies can depend on the public for their investments in the assets. Now let us study the various factors that are affecting the fixed capital requirements. We all know that there are various types of organizations. And so the first thing that is there, that is the nature of business. So what is the capital requirements that is depending on the nature of business that is being conducted? There are various types of business ownership. There is the sole tradership, we have the partnership, we have the corporation and the cooperative societies. All these types of business are depending on who are the owners and what is the number of owners that are going to be there. So based on this, what is the business that is going to be conducted? So basically here we can observe that the organization that is there, what is the type of organization? And based on that, there are various types of business. And so these business that are going to be the estate, or they can be retailers or the service industry, utilities or the products. Whatever is the type of organization, what is the scope of business that is going to be conducted? What is the nature of business that is going to be conducted over here? And so there are various types of business that are there. Again, that is the service business, merchantising business, the hybrid business, manufacturing business. And so these various types of organization, what is the nature of business that is going to be conducted? So there are various types of companies also. Now, all these are going to be deciding what is the nature of business that is going to be conducted. And so when we say the nature of business that is going to be there, so this is going to be deciding as to what is the fixed capital requirements. And so this type of business is going to decide as to how much is going to be the capital investment in this fixed asset. The next that is there, the size of business. The fixed capital requirements depends upon the scale of operations that are conducted in any type of organization. As we have formally seen, what is the nature of business? That is, what is the type of business that is going to be conducted? Based on that, we have the factors that determine the size of business. The bigger the organization, more will be the fixed capital requirements. So the size of the capital that is going to be required. The number of employees that are working in the organization. Volume of sales. Level of technology. What is the type of technology that is going to be utilized over here? The raw materials utilized. The legal form of ownership. So these are the factors that determine the size of any business organization. Also, we have over here micro, small, medium or large type of organizations. So, smaller the organization, less will be the fixed capital requirements. Bigger the capital organization, more will be the fixed capital requirements. The next type of factor that we are going to study is the scope of business. So, investment depends upon the scope of business like amount of production and distribution. There are various types of organizations again, and so here we have the industry and the trade and commerce. So here there is the production and the distribution, that is the manufacturing, extractive, genetic, construction, assembly, service. These are the industry or where production is being concentrated. When we have these type of organization, there will be more requirement of fixed capital. But if there is the trade and commerce, that is, we have the trade, inland trade or the foreign trade, or if there are various services, that is the banking, transportation, insurance, warehousing, mercantile agents, they will require less of fixed capital. But whatever it is, this is depending on the production, that is whenever there is going to be more of production, more investment takes place in the fixed capital. If it is going to be distribution, at that time there is going to be more requirement in the working capital and less in the fixed capital requirements. And so we can observe over here that there is the business, that is the innovations, that are various types of organizations. So depending on that, that is again the production that is going to be there. If it is going to be operational, we have the various lines of business that is going to be conducted. The process that is there, that is what is the manufacturing process that takes place over here. So depending on that, we have the fixed capital. the markets that are there, that is when the goods are going to be stored, that is when the goods are going to be stored in any warehouses. So what is the requirement of that? So there is going to be a less requirement of fixed capital. In services, that is wherever services like banking, transportation, insurance are going to be there, that is at that time there is less fixed capital requirement. Extent of lease or rent. Lease or rent. It refers to wherein a business decides to hire the assets instead of purchasing it. Due to this, less amount of capital is required for investment in fixed capital. If companies can arrange financial and leasing facilities easily, then they require less fixed capital as they can acquire assets on easy installments instead of paying huge amount at one time. There are various types of organizations. There are various firms which require certain assets only during a fixed period of time. For the rest of the year, they do not require those assets. So in such a situation, these organizations hire those assets for a fixed period of time. And so this is helping these organizations to save them from purchasing these assets. Arranging of subcontracts. Subcontract means the organization employs another firm to be a part of its project. Due to this, the organization requires less investment in its own fixed assets. If companies are preferring collaborations or joint ventures, then companies will need less fixed assets as they can share plant and machinery with their collaborators. And so, subcontracts are very much useful for such type of organizations. So, for example, when there are the watchmaking companies, they usually are getting the parts manufactured from smaller companies. They enter into contracts with those organizations. And so, those smaller companies are providing those parts, that is the smallest parts that are going to be required in the watches. And so, these bigger organizations do not have to invest in all those smaller fixed capital or in the smaller fixed assets that is going to be required. And so due to this, they are saving on all those fixed assets, that is manufacturing the smaller parts. And it is easier for them to purchase it from the other organizations. And so they enter into subcontracts with the other smaller organizations. Or they can take the help of the other organizations, that is they enter into collaborations. And so here these organizations, due to such collaborations or joint ventures, are able to earn more profits and able to invest less in the fixed capital. International conditions. Companies invest in fixed assets depending upon international conditions. If the economic conditions at international level are unstable, firms invest less in fixed assets and purchase more raw materials. We all know that countries have various restrictions and are having their own rules and regulations regarding importing and exporting of the goods. Therefore, our companies are going to invest in the fixed capital as per the international level also. And so, we all also know that there are nearly 180 medicines which are banned in India. But in remote countries of Africa, those medicines are still required. Our Indian companies are manufacturing those medicines based on the requirement at that particular level. Based on that itself, we are having the fixed assets required in those companies. Trends in economy. The changes in the economic situation decides the future planning for expansion and diversification of the firm. If there is a positive economic situation, the firm invests in fixed assets that will be useful for production. For example, we have Mahindra and Mahindra, the first company to manufacture ventilators. In this present situation that is required, the ventilators, that is the most required aspect, these were the first company to manufacture them and not only have it in our own country, but they have also started exporting. So based on that itself, the company started diversifying itself and started diverting their funds to the fixed assets that will be required to manufacture the ventilators. Population trend. The increase in the population becomes an opportunity for expansion of markets. Automobile industry, textile industry find great opportunity when there is great increase in population. Investment in fixed assets is required in more amount. Our Indian population, which is increasing, has a great market for various types of industries. For example, we all know that petrol and diesel are such aspects which will be getting over in certain period of time. And so there are various alternative vehicles, that is battery operated vehicles, which are finding the trend in this population. Consumer preference. The consumer's likes and dislikes decides the amount of goods to be manufactured. Based on that, the investment in fixed assets is decided. So the consumer's likes and dislikes keep on changing. So based on that, the fixed assets will also have to be updated. And we have the competitive factor. So this is one of the most important factor that decides the manufacturing aspect in an organization. Competition decides the amount of investment in fixed assets based on the other companies manufacturing the same type of goods. Privatization is one such aspect which has led to the competitive factor. And so, due to this cutthroat competition in the market, there is an increase, that is the requirement of the profit that has to be increased in the organization. Therefore, the fixed capital requirements are decided based on these factors. And so, whenever there is going to be the requirement of the fixed capital, according to that, the assets are going to be invested in the organization. These are all the factors that are affecting the fixed capital requirements.